So, what do we do with something that really is terrible, something that is really evil, abominable? How do we deal with a situation where someone or some people are doing something that is so utterly deplorable, depraved, something that deserves the word abominable? I think we can all imagine terrible things like that. Perhaps the serious abuse of a young child, for example, but there's many other things. And I wanted to give a short talk, my thoughts about that. Well, the first thing is that we have a duty ourselves to try and protect other people where we're able to. If we witness some kind of abuse of that sort, then we have a duty to step in, a moral obligation to do what we can to help protect a victim and prevent there from being serious harm. We have a right to defend ourselves and other people if we should witness or encounter any kind of serious abuse of that nature. We also have a duty too to report anything, but in that sense, we have to always strive to be accurate, to be objective. We have to be cautious if we suspect something but we don't have firm evidence, not to go out and tell people that it's absolutely happened. We have to state it in the manner in which we know it is or not. That is to say that we can't overstate or understate something. If we have doubts but lack evidence, we have to say why we have the doubts, but also admit that we have lack of evidence, because there's a benefit of the doubt. We don't want to prosecute someone or convict someone who's actually innocent and wrongfully accused. And many people can look guilty when in fact they're innocent. So we want to avoid harming someone who's innocent. We don't want to slander or be guilty of defamation of character, because, muddying someone's reputation can really harm them. But at the same time, we do have a duty where we have sufficient evidence to confront someone where we're able to, when we're in a position to protect ourselves, but also other people around us too. And it's really important that we do that when we're called to, when we're in the position to. And that's true for all of us, of course. But it's recognizing when we do have sufficient evidence and when we're in the position to do that too. When people commit atrocities, when they do something that's that abhorrent, that deserves the word abomination, that's what that word is fitting for, when something's evil, like the rape of a child, for example, it's easy to be drawn to want to avenge, for vengeance, because it obviously invokes anger in any of us, an upset, the thought of any innocent child going through something that terrible, that deplorable. Quite rightly, our emotions are stirred at the mere thought of something like that, especially if it's someone close to us. But I think most of us would feel that for any child, actually. And I think we need to be careful that we're not driven by vengeance alone, though. Our primary purpose should be driven to protect innocent people as much as possible, through whatever means are the best to serve that purpose. But obviously, someone that commits an atrocity of that nature needs to be confronted at some point, if we are sure that they have done that and that there's sufficient evidence to know that beyond reasonable doubt. And if there is, then we do have a duty to confront them and to make sure that they are prevented to the best of our abilities from committing further atrocities against victims, to prevent the physical and psychological damage to those victims, which can be catastrophic and can take many years to get over and can be an awful burden. The trauma can really be an awful thing for a victim to carry and to live with. The person that commits such atrocities, I feel, that they should be given an opportunity to change their lives, but at the same time, that's got to be balanced with protecting them from committing further crimes, further offences to other people. How can we be sure if they would go on to commit other offences? They might easily lie and pretend that they're remorseful to try and get early release, for example. But we have to give people the chance, I feel, to change their lives, and to improve themselves, to have that chance, that second chance for transformation. I do believe in giving people the chance, and to forgive them. But I think that has to come secondary after protecting them from, protecting victims from the offenders. But I think prison, to that extent, is the logical way to do that. In fact, interestingly, one of the early terms for a prison was a penitentiary, and that comes etymologically. A penitentiary comes from the same root word, repentance, to show remorse, to recognise the wrong that you've done, and to make amends for that. And restorative justice is a great thing about victims with mediation confronting the perpetrators. And I believe that can be a great aid too. I do believe in giving people the fair chance to change their lives for the better, but only in a position where they are already prevented from committing further atrocities of that nature. But I think that's something we all should bear in mind ourselves. We have a right to try and protect other people when we're in a position to do so, of whatever nature that is. Ultimately, I think as well, my own belief is that God will judge us all, and God judges us all fairly. That's my own belief, and I feel a duty to tell that to other people. And I would want to say to people that do commit awful offences to others, that take advantage of the vulnerable, I would say to them that actually you are harming yourself, and harming other people in actual fact is harming your own soul. You are harming your soul in the sense that you're not living up to the great potential, not fulfilling who you could be, the best version of who you can be. And I do believe ultimately we will all be judged by God on Judgment Day. There will be karmic judgment. What that will entail, I can't say, but I do believe that God has ultimate power. And so I have a duty, I feel, to give people fair warning, that if they continue in that action without repenting, without stopping that harm to other people, then they will eventually face the consequences of that. And I don't say that lightly, because actually wisdom begins with the fear of God. And when you think about it, our power over each other, as awful as it can be sometimes, it is at least limited by time, by space, by our own abilities. Our lifetimes here are all limited. Our powers are. We're all going to die. We're all mortal to that extent. Whereas, in fact, God has unlimited power over us, and that's what's frightening. The wrath of God is frightening to those that have taken the time to consider it. If there was such a thing, to those people that don't believe in that, if you considered hypothetically, if there was a being that had unlimited power, how much more frightening would it be than any other power that us mortals as humans can have over each other? Our power is limited to this lifetime. Yes, we can commit and harm each other awfully, but imagine that kind of power with no limit, where you could be sent for thousands of years to live in solitary confinement. You could be brought back as an animal. Your soul could be erased, or a number of things. Now, I don't have any evidence for that, of course. And some people would say, well, I don't see any evidence, therefore I don't believe it's true. Well, absence for evidence isn't always evidence for absence, in fact. And I would suggest the reason why there's no evidence is because that creates a more genuine and fair test, in fact. Because if you knew beyond any doubt that there was a judgment day and there was rewards and punishments and there were consequences to your actions, if you had absolute evidence of that, then the only reason that you would do good would be to get a reward or to avoid being punished. And that wouldn't be a legitimate reason. It would be a much more fairer trial if you didn't know that there were going to be consequences. Otherwise, you're only doing it out of fear of punishment or out of desire for reward. Now, that's my own theory of why there isn't any evidence for that. But as Pascal said, it's a bit of a gamble, isn't it? Who of us really knows what happens to our soul after we've died? Maybe some people don't believe that they have a soul, perhaps. Certainly our bodies physically die. We know that biologically. But what really does happen after that? Who amongst us has died and returned to tell the tale with accurate memories? So I would say Pascal was right to say it's a gamble, and are you willing to gamble your soul? I would say, and I would feel duty to give people a fair warning that if they don't stop harmful actions on vulnerable people, that it's ultimately their soul that they will pay the price for. And I think personally, a friend is someone that gives you that warning and says, you know what, if you continue what you're doing, you're going to end up harming yourself. It's you that will pay the price for that. I don't want that for anyone. I don't take any joy in someone that's committed atrocities suffering either. There is no joy in anybody's suffering. It's in my interest to want someone that's committing harm to others to stop what they're doing, both for their own sake, but also for the sake of other potential victims too. It's a win-win situation and a beneficial thing, a mutually beneficial thing for everyone. So I would really encourage anyone, for their own sake, to stop harming others, but also for the sake of other people too. And that's how I look at it. It's a very logical thing. People can choose to believe that or disbelieve that. And I would say before you do either, take adequate time to contemplate and to study it and to think about it first. And to maybe meditate, maybe pray, maybe research, maybe ask other people before you rush and decide. And I would say start with an agnostic position. Start with a blank page of, I don't know, whether there's a God or not, whether there's a judgment day or not, whether there's a soul or not, and what those things might mean before I accept or reject them. So those are my brief thoughts. I don't want to go on from that because I think, that's the essence, the important things. I think that, we can all do harm to others. I don't want to sort of think that there's one group of people that do terrible things and the rest of us are all okay, because I think we all desire redemption and we all actually have a lot of hard work to do ourselves. That's how I view it. Everybody can commit lots of harm in actual fact over a long period of time in our life. So I think it's also worthwhile saying to other people, just because you may have done a lot of wrong to other people, and that's quite hard to come to terms with. But other people too have. We all have, actually. We all make mistakes. In fact, we all do awful wrong things on purpose. Not to the same extent and not the same amounts, no. But we've all got lots of things to improve about ourselves. And we're all on a journey. And, if we do awful things to others, we can all face those consequences. And I think I feel morally obliged to give fair warning to other people, whether they choose to heed those warnings or not. People have free will, we all do, and that's given to us for a reason. We've got the freedom to do good and bad things to each other. We've got the freedom to do those things, but we don't have the freedom from the consequences of our actions ultimately. And I would say, like Socrates says, it's in our interests to treat other people honourably, rightfully, But we all make mistakes. We all sometimes, in anger, in when we are just, perhaps possessed with an angry spirit sometimes, and we're not thinking right. Or perhaps sometimes we can be brought up with really bad ideas and we don't know any better, But I think God is a fair judge, and God will know if somebody doesn't really know any better, and that's all they knew, then that's quite understandable, in fact. But somebody that has learnt and does know right from wrong, we are judged according to what our knowledge is and what our abilities are. We don't always know that of each other, but God certainly knows that. For mankind judges by appearance, but God searches the secrets hidden inside a man's heart.